So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Just a couple of housekeeping items as we get going. If you wanted to keep yourselves on mute, and then as there's questions, you feel free to unmute yourself, or if you want to use the text chat, you could do that, and I could relay those questions. So I just wanted to welcome back Amy Ongaro. She is with the Thunder Bay Public Library, and she's a community hub librarian relationship supervisor. So we appreciate you coming and talking today about all the valuable information that we can find at the library and helping us with our businesses. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy getting the opportunity to reach new people. So yeah, as was said, my name is Amy Ongaro. Feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. You can also email me or phone me after. My contact information is in the presentation. I'm just going to go ahead and screen share so we can get into the actual presentation. All right. So yeah, at the Thunder Bay Public Library, we've been doing helping small businesses access databases for market research for a very long time now, going on decades. And we're super happy to offer these types of services to small business owners in the community and help them grow. So an overview of what we're going to go through in today's workshop is just the fundamentals of market research and demographics, where to start your research and how to find information. And then we'll go through a couple demonstrations of library databases. So just to oversimplify what market research is, you're trying to find out who you sell to, who are your competitors, with the overall goal being how big is your potential market. So those are the main three questions you're trying to answer typically when you're doing market research. And then there's other questions layered within these questions, but those are the overall goals usually of doing market research. And doing this kind of research can help you with grant applications or any sort of funding you're going through if you're doing some sort of business competition. Anytime you're seeking funding, this is the kind of information that investors would want to see. So now we'll go into demographics a bit. So the two broadest categories you can think about as a business that you could sell to are for people and for business. So within both of these categories, you can find smaller categories within them and subdivide it further, and it can help you find your specific target market and try and answer the question, who do you sell to? So now we'll look at both those segments in detail a bit more. So business demographic information. So if you're selling to business, what can you find out about a business to help make your job easier, basically? So things like the number of employees an organization has will tell you a lot about what kind of funding they receive, and just the size of their employees. So if you're a supplier for PPE or something, you're selling medical gloves, medical equipment, knowing how many employees, how much they use on average in things like gloves, masks, those sorts of things, is a really helpful data point if you're in glove or mask manufacturing. Additionally, annual sales for the business is something you can find out, and it's also something really helpful to base things like pricing on. Things like number of locations they serve. So if you're, say, a baker and you want to distribute your baked goods to retail chains in town, sell it to other grocery stores, places like that, knowing the number of locations that chain might have, like maybe it's just 2 locations and it's a small local chain, or maybe it's somewhere like Metro that also does get in local goods. That's the kind of information you'd want to know to see how far your reach and impact could be by getting into grocery stores. And then another thing you're going to want to look at is how many businesses of this type are in your market area. So if you are a bakery, let's look at how many bakeries could be in Thunder Bay. Those types of questions are what you're going to want to ask yourself in order to see where the gaps in the market might be or how big your competition is. It's also a great way to figure out, you can also do this instead of thinking about businesses you sell to, ask the same questions about people who you are potentially in competition with. And then you can go even further and look at things like how do they price their goods or services to get a better understanding of how things work in the market you're entering. And then demographics of people. If you've ever done the census before, this is probably very familiar. So things like age, gender, income, education level, and family size / status. These are all things that can help determine who actually lives in your community. So recently there was new language data released from the 2021 census by Stats Canada. And there are a lot of languages from India that are appearing in Thunder Bay because we finally have a large base of international students coming here through the college and university. So knowing things like that and being able to track it is really helpful when doing market research. So again, this target audience information is really helpful for things like advertising, tailoring services and products. So things like family size, if there are a lot of families that are single parent, you might want to tailor your services to accommodate that. Or if there's a lot of families with only one child, how can you set up your space that could be accommodating for parents with one child or even multiple children to space? Those are all things you can figure out. And then even with age, Thunder Bay's population in particular tends to skew a bit older. So how can you make your physical storefront, if you have one, most accessible? And even if you don't have a storefront, how can you make even your website and social media more accessible to the demographic of people that do live in the city? Okay, so now we'll go through some of the places where you can actually find information on your customers, be they business or otherwise. So most people, when they start looking for information, I'll start with Google or another search engine, which is totally fine. You can get a lot of good information from Google. It's just one of those things to remember that people pay to get to the top of Google. So the first link isn't always the best when you're searching for information. But it's a great way to get started for just looking up bakeries in Thunder Bay. You can get a pretty thorough result and see how big that section of the market is in Thunder Bay. If you're wanting to open a bakery, you'll know how many people are also owning bakeries in town. So Google is a great place to start like that, but there's also in Thunder Bay a lot of really great other sources to start with. We're very lucky to have a lot of places like Paro, who we're with today, who want to help entrepreneurs succeed in Northwestern Ontario, specifically women. But there's a lot of great places that do these sorts of workshops to help you continue your learning. And they also release economic reports, like the CEDC has a lot of incentives and reporting they do since they are part of the city that will help you plan your business and see what's out there. There's also like things like Statistics Canada. So if you're doing anything particularly related to health, that is a great place to get information specifically about health, because in addition to the census, they also do custom surveys for stuff like workforce, health information, things like that that are more about people's day-to-day lives than the census is. And that's really valuable information. There's another source of information that has that hasn't been touched yet, and you probably, as a business owner, have a lot of information at your disposal already. So some of the things, some of the things you might already have is qualitative data. So that's things like customer feedback and surveys that you might have done in the past. And if you've ever gone to a big box store and they've circled the bottom of your receipt and asked you to fill out a survey for a chance to win a gift card or something, that's them trying to do market research and get your customer feedback. The thing about doing things like that is that you're never just going to do it once and then never do it again. Just like market research as a whole, it's something you're going to want to keep up to date redo annually or whenever it makes sense for your business, or anytime there's a major change in the economy or the society, like we just got out of a pandemic. So if you were in business then or are in business doing market research and trying to figure out what people are comfortable doing during a time like that and comfortable spending, those are the types of moment in time when you're going to want to do a bit of market research just to get an idea of what's going on. It's an extreme example, but there are smaller examples as well. Even just things like inflation going up and down is a great time to revisit some of this. Also, social media interactions. So if you have a social media page for your business, you have a lot of demographic information on the back end of the app. So I helped get the library's Facebook and Instagram statistics every month so we can track how many followers we have, how much time they're watching our videos, all of that stuff. You can get out of those apps. They also do gender breakdowns, country breakdowns, and then cities, so the top cities of people like watching your content. So that's like more quantitative data, but you can get really great qualitative data too from like just Facebook comments, Instagram comments. If you use any of the variations of Twitter that have popped up in the past couple of months, people will give you feedback through those platforms as well. And then in terms of more traditional quantitative data, you probably might already have sales reports if you've been in business for a while. And then you'll probably, even if you haven't been in business for very long, have your business expenses. So using that information to guide future decisions is all part of market research. So now we're just going to get into the library database demonstrations. Just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment just to exit it. All right, so now we're here on the library's website. So for all of external use of all of these databases, you'll need to get a library card. And if you don't have one, I'll quickly show where to get that online. So if you go to Browse, and then there is my library card on the side here under the Browse category. You can apply for an e-service card online. So it's not a full library card yet. You'd have to go to a library to get a physical library card in order to borrow things like books, DVDs, or other physical materials. But our e-services cards allow you to use any of our internet stations, but as well as all of the databases we'll be going through today. And even if you don't use the library card, but you visit the library, as long as you're on our Wi-Fi, you can also access these databases. So now we'll go to the actual databases themselves. They are under research, and then we'll just hit research again at the top to get to our main research page. And there's information about all of our databases on this page, but we'll just go right to the research list, which we do by clicking this top header image. And then we get a virtual resource list from A to Z. So the first product we'll go through today is called Info Canada. So Info Canada is a database that gives us information mostly about businesses. At this point, if you were at home, it prompts you to enter a library barcode and PIN number, but since I'm currently at the library, it's not going to prompt me to get any of that information. So we'll click on this Canadian business section and hit Start Search. So if you have a particular company in mind that you want to find information about, you could type it in there. Or if you want to get a sense of what companies are in a specific field as a whole, you can use the advanced search. So this company works by doing phone verification for all their data. So they call annually around to businesses with entries in here to see if the information is accurate and correct and basically survey business owners. They also get information from a bunch of public sources that you can pay to have access to. And then they condense it into one space to make it easier for people who buy subscriptions to their database like the library does. to have access to. So one of the easiest ways to search this database is to go to this record type section. So you can search all record types, but there's verification. Since they do phone verification, you can search only verified business records. So sometimes a business will stay on the database for a few years, even if they can't make contact, just because they assume they've just been missing them and they don't remove it from the database right away. So as you can see, it went from about 2.3 million down to 1.1 million throughout all of Canada for businesses that are phone verified. Since it's a really big job, that's not surprising, and we're halfway through the year. It makes sense, but from here we can then search by city. So we can select our province of Ontario, then filter our choice to Thunder Bay. Then we can add Thunder Bay to this list. If you wanted to add other cities in Ontario to compare, if you're setting up multi-locations in Ontario, you could filter it that way as well. So you could add places like Nipigon, Geraldton, or even Sudbury, Sault Ste. Marie to that list and compare multiple cities at once, or get data from businesses in those cities all at once. But we're just going to keep it simple for today's demonstration and just focus on Thunder Bay. From that, we can then do a keyword search. I usually keep it on all of the industry codes, and then just do a keyword search. So the example there is restaurants. So we can use our bakery example from earlier. It just takes a while to load. So then there's exact matches to more specific. So if we wanted to look at bagels specifically, it's there. We have bakers, cakes and pies, cookie shops. Then they have stuff specific to manufacturing. What you'll find is there's a lot of very specific manufacturing industry codes. Then we have grocers, retail, wholesale. So we'll just stick to more of the traditional bakeries. So we could do bakers, cake and pie, and then cookie shops, and then view results. Oh, I was too specific. Update count. So I was too specific, so I've done too much filtering. So we'll switch it to all record types and see if that helps us. That's very weird. And we'll search here. Okay, so we'll just try bakers, retail. We'll update our count, and that gives us 34, which is more correct to what we're looking for. So we're looking for retail bakers in Thunder Bay, and then we'll hit view results. And then it'll give us a list of bakeries and delis in the city. So this works by like businesses register for multiple industry codes. So if we take our top example, which is Agostino's, they're a bakery, but also a deli and a specialty grocer, we can take a look at what descriptions they use. So they've so far used bakers retail and retail bakeries. And this is helpful because it'll give you the contact information and location and the year they first appeared in the database. Obviously, Agostino's has been around for a lot longer than 2015, but they've been in this database since 2015. Then it'll tell you the number of local employees, the sales volumes. There's no corporate employees because there's single location, and estimates of their credit rating. Then they'll also list the owners. Sometimes there's multiples, or other owner or CEO, CFO will be listed sometimes for bigger businesses. Then the interesting part here is if you're just getting started is they have estimates of the average business expenditure. So these are estimates an industry average is. So the database basically says, okay, if they have this many employees and they're making the sales volume, and for this industry, what is it likely that they're spending on things like accounting, advertising, and insurance? So they are estimates, but they are still helpful to give you a sense of the potential range for what could be budgeted if you're going to open a similar business. Then the other interesting sections they have in here are nearby businesses, so you can get a sense especially if you're looking in a city that's unfamiliar to you. You can get a sense of what the other businesses around are like. So there are basically just things on Arthur Street and in the small mall that Agostino's is in there. Then we can also look more into the competitors report. So who's in direct competition with this business? So Nucci is Sweet Escape, Five Star Bakery, Carol's Cakes. So then you can, from there, click on any one of these listings and get the same information. So again, you can see this the bakery has a bit more in terms of business codes that they have registered under. They also have a smaller staff, so there's only 3 people there. Again, the management directory is there, and then the business expenditures are here as well. And then you can just keep clicking through the competitors report, or we can go back to the top and hit back twice and get back to our search from earlier. So in the search from earlier, you can see there's the green for verified and the U for unverified. That'll tell you the record type. So if this person's been phoned in the last 12 months or not is basically what that's telling you, to double check their information. And if you're wanting to save this information for later, you can click on the top tabs. You can only save up to 50 records at a time, but if you just keep clicking through, you can download the data to print, export later for your own records. And then it'll ask you for your format. Most people do CVS or Excel. You can do summary or detailed, so that's every data field that we saw earlier. Or you can do custom. So custom basically lets you select fields and drag and drop them to the other side. So we can add in any number of these as much as we want until we're satisfied, and then just download the records and it'll show up in your downloads on your computer. Is there any questions about that database?
Nothing in the chat. I don't know. Mary Margaret, do you have any questions?
Oh, your microphone's off.
Yeah.
I don't right now, thank you. I'm really encouraged to see how much data we can actually get here.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing and easy.
Yeah.
So
Sounds good.
Awesome.
it is good.
Awesome. Well, since we've basically covered everything for Info Canada, we'll now move on to our next database. I'll just go back to the library website. All right, so we'll go back to our research page from earlier. And then get back to our database list. And then we'll go down to our next one, which is Simply Analytics. So Simply Analytics is able to provide us more information about people. Again, at this point, if you're at home or at another location that's not the library, you can log in with your PIN or your library barcode and PIN, and then you'll be able to access the database. Once you do that, you have the choice to sign in as a guest or put in or create an account. So I do have an account for Simply Analytics. It's just there's a lot of projects in there, so I'm just going to sign in as a guest because it'll be faster to load because of the amount of projects I have up right now. So every time you go to Simply Analytics for the first time, it'll give you a quick tour to show you where things are, which is helpful for a refresher, but I'm just going to skip through it for now. And then we get to the new project setup wizard. So it always asks you to type in a location first. So I will use Thunder Bay. And then you can see we have multiple different Thunder Bays now. It's always largest to smallest based on population. So the census division is the biggest geographically. It contains all of the rest of these basically, so it has the most people. Then if we go back down to the bottom where it's Thunder Bay Unorganized Territory, it's a bigger geography than the metro area and the census subdivision, but there are less people living on the outskirts of the Thunder Bay area compared to the census metro area or the census subdivision. The metro area is basically the city plus any surrounding towns where the population of those surrounding towns goes to the larger city center for services and goods. So for Thunder Bay, think of places like Shunya, Oliver, Papoose, Kekabeka, Murillo, those sorts of places. We are going to focus today, though, on the census subdivision. So that's the city proper, the city of Thunder Bay itself. And then we'll hit next. And then I'll ask you to choose one or more seed variables to get started with our search. So it always picks by default the total population, households by income, the median income for the current year, and then household population between 25 and 64 who has a bachelor's degree. So then we'll just hit create project from there. And it'll start by generating a map for us with our data. The thing to know about the mapping feature is that if you're using a laptop or a tablet, depending on the screen size, it might not generate. Usually 17-inch screen or higher will get the best resolution, but it will still work. It's just you won't see things like the lake as well. So if you're not familiar with the city, it's a little harder to get oriented. So if you're able to use a bigger monitor, I would recommend doing that if you're doing lots of work with this mapping feature. So then if we look at the top here, it'll tell us what we're looking at in the map. So currently we're looking at the basics of the total population in Thunder Bay, and then the little divisions are census tracts. And then we have our legend here that has the ranges for the colors and the data at the top. So if you want to change the data and use another data point, we can change it from population to households by income, for example. And the map will regenerate for us. So for Thunder Bay specifically, you can see that people who live on the other side of the highway from the city tend to make more money per household. If we wanted to see this in smaller parcels of land, we can go from census tract to dissemination areas. And in this section here, it's basically from biggest to smallest by geography. Most of these are based on the census, but the one outlier is forward sortation area. That is the first 3 letters of the postal code. So it's not to do with the census, but it's still sorted by largest to smallest. And then the smallest we can get is dissemination area. So this is where you can really tell if you are familiar with the city you're looking at. Things you know about the city, you can see on this map. So if we look over here, for example, we have these 2 very dark patches of land. And at first, it's not sure why, but then you zoom in closer and you can tell that's High Street and that's the Merriday Park area where there's a lot of character homes. So especially looking at income, in order to maintain a character property like that, you are going to need better income. The other thing to point out too is if you're ever doing like flyer advertisement, while everything in terms of business, like a lot of people go to Port Arthur for recreation entertainment, and there's a lot going on at downtown Port Arthur, the people who live there are usually in rental units and they're not making over $60K a year. So that is important to note when you're doing advertising. The people in the downtown areas often aren't the people with the money to go to events or have a disposable income to do extra things. So that's very important to note when you are advertising. You're going to want to hit neighborhoods like Merriday Park where people do have more income to spend, or similar situation here. So this is kind of by St. Patrick's High School. This is another plot or section of character homes. So these are areas where people are making more money in order to maintain those properties. Oh, did somebody have a question? I heard a beat. Oh, okay. I'll continue on. So this is especially good for print advertising again. And I think I haven't used Google Ads, but you can target Google Ads sometimes to be more specific in postal codes as well. So if you want to figure out who makes the, like which area of the city of Thunder Bay makes the most or the median income wise per household, we can go to the ranking table. So if you see on this left-hand side here, or sorry, the right-hand side here, we have other reports we can run through Simply Analytics. If you go to the ranking table, it'll give us the 3 data points from before. And then now we're looking at the top 100 census tracts in Thunder Bay sorted by location name. So we can change this. If we do top 1,000, there isn't 1,000 census tracts in Thunder Bay. We can also change it to dissemination areas, which was the geographical unit we were just looking at on the map. And then instead of sorting it by location name, we can sort it by households by income, median household income for the current year. And we've now sorted it by the median household income. So right at the top here, there's a dissemination area where the median household income is about $240,000 a year. So in order to figure out where that is relative to the rest of town, we can click on it and hit create map. And then I'll generate a map for us that has outlined in yellow the geographical units that are within that. So it's the Mount Forest Boulevard area, Mountain Road area, just outside of town. Well, or what you think of, it's still in the city of Thunder Bay, but it's right on the border of being country. So it's a lot of that rural country living. So knowing that people in these outlying areas make a bit more money, again, if you're doing printing or print advertising or anything like that, those are the places you want to target. Also, if you're doing a service-based company, such as like landscaping or something like that, and you wanted to set up a headquarters, in terms of who's more likely to ask for something like landscaping, setting up it in downtown Port Arthur, downtown Fort William probably isn't your best choice because the people who live there aren't going to have the extra money to spend on something like landscaping. So your best bet would be to set up somewhere along the highway so you have easier access to these richer neighborhoods that can afford something like landscaping. So that's the kind of ways you can use this information that we see on the map about the people of Thunder Bay to make business decisions. It's not perfect or exact, but it's a more informed decision than just the rent is cheap right over here, so I'll just set up shop there. In this map feature, we can also look at other information based on, or besides just the ones we picked at the start. So if we turn our attention to the left panel here, we can change our location here by just typing in another location, just like in Google or Maps or something, or we can change our data. So if we wanted to look at something else, we can do that here. So if we wanted to look at age, and I usually, when we're in these folders, we can filter it. So you can do average, count, or percentage. I usually switch it to count because you can figure out the average and percentages better that way. So if you wanted to figure out the number of people who are between the ages of 25 to 29, because you've determined based on, say, your social media statistics and other feedback you've gotten that a lot of your clients are between 25 and 29. We can click that there, and it will then map the number of people between 25 and 29 onto this map. So the lightest being 0 to 20, and then there's a huge range in darker colors. So since that's not super helpful, we can edit it, edit our legend basically. You can manually do it, or we can put natural breaks local, and it generates it based on the data that happens locally. Or you can do equal intervals if that makes more sense to you, but then that changes the map a lot. So it's not recommended, but we'll go back to natural breaks local and then hit done. So if you want to see where most people in this age group live, you can see a dark color over here, and I'm pretty sure that's right by the university. And to get the exact quantity for an area, you just switch to the information mouse here, and you can click on it, and it'll tell you what the location name is, and then the value for mapped data. So in this dissemination area, 142 people between the ages of 25 to 29 live in the area. So you can do that with any of the data here. It's just more helpful to do it based on population and things like that. And if you're thinking to yourself, how do I get all of the information on the map into a spreadsheet? We can do that by running a comparison table. So a comparison table usually starts out with the country, the location you started with, and then the 3 variables we started at with the beginning. So you can add more locations to this. So if we wanted to do that, we go to this location field. We can type in Ontario as a province. So now we can look at Thunder Bay, Ontario, and Canada all in a row to compare. And then if we go back to data, we can add more information as we need. The most interesting one to business owners here is usually consumer behavior. So this is how much does people in the geographic area spend on average, and how much does this geographical area as a total spend on this certain aspect of spending. So there's a whole bunch of categories you can browse through. There is a lot of information for food. So Simply Analytics has a bunch of providers they use for their data, and Veronix is one, Food Spend is another. So we can figure out the whole, like the total expenditure on food from a year, and then the average total expenditure for food, and that'll be added to our database. So Thunder Bay as a whole spends about $504 million a year on food, and for the average person, it's about $10,000 a year for food on average. And then it gets higher in the rest of Ontario, interestingly, and then drops a bit again. But surprisingly, the average spend on food for Thunder Bay is lower than Ontario and Canada. And this is food as a whole, so that's including things like takeout or dining out. So that might explain why the numbers are higher in Ontario or Canada, because I don't think the food prices are lower here. And we can do that with other aspects too of spending. So if we go back to the food and beverage, it gets very specific. So restaurant meals is in here, again, the total and the average. Dinners, restaurant breakfasts, we even have alcohol and tobacco. There's even, so bakery is in here from our example earlier, and then even specifics like cereal, dairy and eggs, and meat. So we can look at these specific food groups as a whole for spending as well. So it looks like Oh, this is in the billions of dollars. I'm sorry about that. I read the decimal wrong. So this is 504. Wait, that is millions. And then why is this? That is also millions. Okay, sorry. I thought I was going crazy. I think, yeah, okay. So if you look in Ontario, it's like $10 billion spent on meat specifically in a year. Again, I think this includes things like industrial food preparation. Places and factories are included within these numbers when you're looking at Ontario and Canada. But in Thunder Bay, we don't have a lot of that industry for like meat packing, things like that. So our number's a bit lower. What the average household spend, when you look at that, makes a bit more sense. It's about $1,000 a year across the board, closer to 2,000 for Ontario, and 1,700 for Canada. So this is when, if you're looking at, okay, if you wanted to start, some sort of like poultry or meat business, knowing that the city of Thunder Bay spends $71 million a year on meat products across the board, that is helpful information to help you plan, and also knowing that people spend about $1,500 on average in Thunder Bay for meat products could help you with pricing. So if people are buying, like how much, you can then divide it, how much do people make a month or spend a month on meat just by dividing that number, and that can help you determine some more fair pricing or more pricing that people are likely to spend to help inform your business decisions. So yeah, there is a lot of data you can add here. You could poke around for hours to find what you're looking for. In addition to this quick report, which you can totally edit yourself, or this comparison table you can totally edit yourself, we also have this quick report. It'll give you basically a demographic overview of your first two cities, so Thunder Bay and Canada. It'll give you the basics for the population, gender breakdowns, and then the age in 5-year increments, with the average age being at the top. And then visible minority status is in here, as well as income and education levels, and then languages spoken at home, and then housing. For things like language, you can get into more specifics of language if that's relevant to you in the comparison table section, but this is just official language knowledge in the demographic overview. There's one more report in Simply Analytics that I'd like to show everybody today. So if you click on New View here at the top, you can create a business table. So this is basically similar to Info Canada, where we can advance search or browse for business categories within Thunder Bay and see how many businesses show up. So you can browse business categories, but you can also use the advanced search, and you can search by name or number of local employees is greater than, if we put in greater than 100, we can figure out who the top employers in Thunder Bay are. So if you're selling or you're offering services to bigger businesses, if you're a consultant, like an HR consultant, something like that, this is helpful information to know, because the bigger the business is, the more likely they're going to need to have a more robust HR system. That's just one example. But if we sort it by the total employees here, we can, or actually let's go by local employees, sorry. Reverse sort order. It's always confusing how they have it A to Z, but it's numbers. I always pick the wrong one. So we can now see that Lakehead is the largest employer in Thunder Bay with 2,000 employees. And then followed by Resolute, St. Joseph's Care Group, Confederation College, Bombardier, the Sisters of St. Joseph, Sault Ste. Marie. I think that's part of St. Joseph's Care Group. T-Baytel, and then the Corporation of the City of Thunder Bay, and Walmart. Those are the top 10 employers in Thunder Bay. So if you're offering services to managers or employees, it's helpful to look at that way. And then you can also look at their sales volume in here as well. View actions, we can add a column. And then, oh, sales volume is, oh, sorry, I just couldn't see it. So Lakehead, because they are in the business of education, I don't think they really count as having a sales volume, even though they do charge tuition. And I'm not sure why it's in here twice like this, 100%. That must be some weird quirk here. And again, some people don't report their data. You can usually get more estimates out of Info Canada. That's why the products complement each other's nicely. And again, with St. Joseph's Care Group, there is a sales volume here, but again, because it's healthcare, it's a little weird to think of it like that. And again, Corporation of the City of Thunder Bay, they're not in there. Walmart's not going to want us to know what their sales volume is. Grandview Lodge has a sales volume and they're still in here, but I don't think Grandview Lodge is even open anymore. So again, part of doing business research and research on other businesses here is knowing the community a little bit ahead of time. And if you don't, it's one of those things where, oh, why is this 0? Let's look into it. And it's usually because they're a chain or a part of a government. But especially for Grandview, that's something, if you were seeing this and you're from out of town, you'd likely have to Google. And then you'd find probably news articles about it closing or not being used anymore. So yeah, the sales volume for these larger companies, they're not going to post it because they don't want us to know, or they're the government. But we do get some of them. So sales volume for Synergy North is in here, but again, something like that you'd be able to find better by going through the city's website, because they are part of the board somehow for Synergy North, and you can get those reports from the city. But the trucking place, that's in there, so you can look at a bunch of businesses like this in here. Another last and final report that might be super helpful is a time series table. So we can look at our locations we've used throughout this demonstration. So it's Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada, and then this is a dissemination earlier around Mount Forest Boulevard that was making about $240K a year. And then we can look at the basics of the population, or we can look at household income and see how that's going to change over time. We'll click done. And then it'll show us all the way from 2010. And then down here where it says, it just says projection, so PROJ, that's projection. So we're looking at 2022. Okay, so how will the median household income change over the next, from 2025, 26, 27? This is what they're projecting it to be. Again, a lot of the stuff, because it is a projection, if something, again, wild happens like another pandemic, that will significantly affect these projections, but it is helpful to know for planning ahead and thinking into the future. But we can also change it to just the total population. And again, it doesn't look like Thunder Bay's population is expected to grow. However, there are other factors in the city that could make there be a population boom. However, it's one of those things you kind of have to wait and see about. And then even for Canada, Ontario, it's only expected to go up by 1 million. In Canada, it doesn't look like it's growing anytime soon either. So, or there is a grow, but then it's kind of plateaus here by the looks of it. So it is helpful for future planning. All right, so does anyone have any questions about Simply Analytics? Oh, also you can export all of this to CVS files. You can either save it to your computer or email it to yourself. Same with the maps as well. You can export this map and it'll walk you through how you can set up the map and how you want it to look. And then again, you continue to export. You can email it to yourself or download it to your computer. The other thing to note about Simply Analytics, it's only available from 7 to 7 every day. And Thunder Bay Public Library users, there can only be 5 on at once. So if you can't log in for some reason, just wait 20 minutes because you only have 20 minutes to, you're basically on a 20-minute timer when you're using it from a remote location or remote outside of the library. So if you can't get on for some reason, just wait 20 minutes, half an hour, and you should be able to get on, but I haven't heard of anyone running into that problem yet. Yeah, are there any questions?
I don't have any questions. Does anybody else have any questions?
I do, actually. If you're in the database and searching for whatever, and you run into a
I'm sorry, your audio just cut out for a second there. So if you're in the database and you run out into a problem,
yeah, is there someone we can call?
oh, that would be me. So my contact information is right here. Feel free to send me an email or call if you're having any troubles with the database or you have more specific questions later.
Well, I'm always fascinated every time you deliver this presentation. Like I always forget sometimes and then go back and I'm like, oh, right, yeah. But I mean, I always make sure to send people your way to find out all that kind of, information that they could obtain and will help them with their business planning for sure. So thank you so much for coming and presenting to us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy to come. We're happy to offer these services for free to the public. And again, if you need additional help, feel free to set up a meeting or contact me. Afterwards, there is a team of us at the library who works with these kind of databases often. So there are a few of us around who are knowledgeable and can help out with these databases.
Perfect. Amy's put her contact information there in the library, her email and her phone number. So please reach out to her and book an appointment or any kind of information that you need. So thanks everybody for joining us today. And thank you again, Amy. Really appreciate when you come by to share this information with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Have a great rest of the day, everybody.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.